Hey everyone, it's Eric with Brook to River Fly Fishing. It's springtime in Virginia, and that means that bugs are starting to hatch. The fly that we're tying today has been my best producing springtime fly the last couple years by a large margin, and it's not even close. This fly is a typical France fly in light olive with the addition of a soft tackle. This fly most closely imitates a blue wing olive mayfly, which, as most people believe, is one of the most prevalent mayflies found in the United States. This little fly is an absolute fish-catching machine. It packs tons of movement and translucence into a small little package that fish just can't leave alone. Okay, let's get tying. I've got a size 18 Hanik jig hook in the vise. That's paired with a 2.4 millimeter silver slotted tungsten bead. The thread I'm using for this fly today is Semperfli Nano Silk. This is 12/0, and I have it in white. The thread color for this is actually pretty important because this underbody, as I wrap my micro tubing over this, it's going to give a translucence with the lighter white thread underneath. I have tied this with a darker underbody. I find that it doesn't work as well because it's not quite as translucent. Alright, I've got my thread in place. My tail for this is Coq de Leon medium. This is speckled Pardo. I don't really think that the color for this makes a whole lot of difference. I'm going to get a few tail fibers here, get it tied in here on top of the shank. Once I get it started, I can check my length. I don't want it too long. About a hook shank in length is what I'm after. I've got a pretty good length there. Work my way front. You can see I'm leaving these fibers on here on purpose. That's for a good reason. I'm trying to build a little bit of a taper. And with this very thin diameter of thread, I find that it takes a long time to build that taper if I don't leave those fibers on there. It doesn't have to be anything drastic, but I've got myself a nice little taper there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm tying in my micro tubing. So my micro tubing for this fly is Hareline micro tubing in light olive. You do want the micro size. There's also small, but for these really tiny size 18 flies, you want the micro size. I've got that ready. Just a couple inch piece. I'm going to spin this counterclockwise a little bit to get my thread to jump back and catch my tubing there right behind the bead. Now that I have it tied in, I'm going to work my way back, and I'm stretching this pretty good as I work my way back because I want it nice and thin. I don't want to be building up much bulk here. Once I got it tied in back to where my tailing starts, I wrap my thread forward, and when I'm wrapping this, I'm going to stretch this and I'm going to use the rotary function of my vise. So before I do that, I like to throw a half hitch in here. That's going to keep my thread from rotating as I tie. I can just use my bobbin cradle over here, and then I can really focus on stretching this tubing correctly and wrapping it nice and smoothly. So as I'm wrapping here, I'm just doing touching wraps, not trying to overlap, and I've got a really good stretch on this at the beginning. As I work my way up towards the bead, I'm letting a little bit of the tension off so that the tubing has a bit thicker of diameter. That combined with my nice taper I put on before gives me a nice gradually tapered body. A couple wraps in front, couple wraps behind, clip off my micro tubing. Okay, now I'm ready for my soft tackle part. If you're enjoying today's fly tying video, please subscribe to the channel. Now, my soft tackle for this is actually CDC, and this is a medium slate dun color. This color works great. I've also had really good success with a cinnamon color, a tan color, and a brown color. They all seem to work. It doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of difference. When I got my feather out, if I was doing these in size 16 or bigger, which most blue wing olives are not that big, I would just wrap it like I would a regular soft tackle using the stem. However, for these size 18s, I love to use my Swiss CDC clamp. This makes using these feathers super easy. I'm going to just clip my feather like this, and now I have to trim my stem off. I got about a 1/4 inch of my fibers sticking out, and that's going to help me to be able to capture it in my dubbing loop. Okay, my feather is prepped, it's in the clamp. Now I'm going to make my dubbing loop. Now, I don't need to make this big. This is really only about 2.5 inches. I'm also going to do a wrap at the top to close my dubbing loop. That's going to keep things from sliding around in there. My dubbing loop spinner that I use is not fancy. It's just one of these. I don't even know which brand it is, but it works pretty well. I hook it in there like that. I take my feather, which I've prepped, got in the clip, slide it all the way up to the top, and then I just pull down on that as I'm releasing my clip. Okay, we're ready for a spin. Okay, I've got my dubbing loop spun up. Now it's time to wrap my soft tackle. So I'm going to start wrapping my soft tackle, and I'm just stroking these fibers back as I go. If I keep tension on this as I go around and I stroke my fibers back, it usually does pretty well. All right, one more. I've got most of those fibers heading in the right direction. It's time to tie this off. Tie off my dubbing loop again. Wrap or two behind, wrap or two in front, and we're good. I'm going to clip my dubbing loop off. Just double check that I've got my feathers going the right direction here. And now I'm going to put in just a little bit of dubbing here on the front of the fly. This is Hare's Mask dubbing. I just made this myself. I blended it up in my coffee grinder. I don't want a lot of this. I'm just going to use a little bit here at the front of my fly. Okay. Few wraps of my dubbing. It's looking good. And now I'm ready to whip finish. I really like with this Semperfli that I can put a lot of pressure on my whip finishes. I don't use any glue or head cement on here. I don't have any problem with them coming loose. Now I'm going to just give it a little bit of a haircut. I've got a few CDC fibers that are really long, sticking out actually past the tail of the fly. Just going to trim those off so they're not looking too scraggly. And there you have it, folks. Size 18 Blue Wing Olive France Fly soft tackle. This thing will absolutely clean up in the springtime. If you got blue wing olives emerging, put one of these things on. You won't be disappointed. Thank you for watching this brook to river fly tying tutorial. I hope that you give this fly a try, put it in your box, fish it on the tag. It does well when it's up in the water column, especially if there's any type of BWO hatch going on. Fish will eat it and eat it hard.